I was thinking about some other things that would make further connections. And I started thinking about Charlie Brown. And it wasn't too hard from there. Remember that Charlie Brown always wore the yellow shirt. And not only was it a yellow shirt, but it had this very broad band of zigzag line that went across the front. And if you remember, several months ago and some videos back, we showed some information that supported that the zigzag line was in connection with the moon. It was connected with the path of the moon or the movements of the moon, but it's an ancient symbolism that depicts the moon. And there it is on Charlie Brown's yellow shirt. Now just think about even Lucky Charms, where you got that green little leprechaun. Now remember the little green men on the moon, Osiris the Green Man, or the ancient green man that's had the vines growing all around him. In other words, sealed, if you will, and then in connection to Ezekiel 17. So the leprechaun says what? It says something like purple hearts, yellow moons. And then there's the yellow for the shirt, and then the zigzag line which completes the information, the yellow moon. Now something very interesting about Charlie Brown with this color of the banana suit, the Nanna suit, or Nanna suit, in a Nanna suit, in a banana suit. And we know that ba is a connection to death, at least from ancient Egypt. So banana in connection to some sort of net that's being cast, or some sort of pit that's being dug for their own people. And you can see that it's their own people because of what? Because of what? Nobody else is involved in this degree stuff. Nobody else is concerned with the third degree or whatever degree, or the 32nd degree, or even the 33rd degree. Nobody's even concerned with that except people in their organization. What is Charlie Brown displaying here? Well, I've got 32 on his forehead. Notice he always says, good grief, double. Good grief. Why is he always saying good grief? Because he ain't having such a good time. He don't ever seem to have a really good day. You know what I mean? And then remember the expression that he's always got in his mouth when something doesn't go right, when he goes to kick the ball and it's swiped out from under his feet again, over and over and over and over again. You know, he's got that squiggly line, just like the moon in a sense, going across his mouth. Charlie Brown, let's think about the name for a minute. What's that going to tell us? It's going to tell us why I've put the 32 there. C is the third letter of the alphabet. B is the second letter of the alphabet. In other words, 32. Now, what does that mean? Well, there's the basketball net behind you. Anybody remember what ephah was from Zechariah 5? Those two ladies that lifted up that dry measure of grain in an ephah basket in connection with the parable of the wheat and the tares, Matthew 13. Well, that basketball hoop represents a ring. But this ring that everybody's trying to get the ball in, or at least the Africans that think they know how to play basketball, as Monix was saying to him in the movie Semi-Pro. Remember when Monix threw the ring at Clarence Withers, or a.k.a. Coffee Black, or a.k.a. Andre Benjamin, and said, I want you to have this ring, which was Monix's. It was his ring. But he says, I want you to have it as a token of something that you'll never achieve. And one day you'll look back and realize you never even learned how to play the game of basketball. Well, we know what the basket is. The basket is the ephah. That's the container. that was even considered lead. And then we've got to think about Led Zeppelin and then buying the Stairway to Heaven. And then we got to think about what Jesus said in his parable about that hid treasure in a field. And then, of course, the pearl of the great price, and how everybody's selling everything they have to buy these things. Well, the kingdom of heaven is not something that you can buy, is the understanding here. But as we see how Jesus purchased his very enemies, it was a sacrifice of the self, not a sacrifice of others. Jesus sacrificed, in essence, or offered himself as the sacrifice, so that those of us who firmly believe him and spread his gospel of truth won't have to shed any blood. That blood has already been shed, in essence, to purchase the enemies, and then to guarantee the disciples of truth will be brought through this unscathed. See it however you want to see it. Doesn't bother me. So what I'm telling you here is the truth. Notice that the basket has got the crosshatched lines. Everything that you've been seeing is all about that seal with those very same crosshatched lines. Over and over, double X. And then that becomes the chains that bind. That becomes the bands of Orion. Even the ball and iron chain, if you will. So here it is being coded into the symbolism with the basketball, which represents the ephab basket. Ephab basket is connected to something of another word for a tone of color, and it's translated as blackness. But it's in relationship to the grain, which now is the ergot, E-R-G-O-T. And then that is an E-R, that's an erring, making a mistake in your going, as far as I see it, or an ergotten gain, which now connects back to got ham, in which they're going to use this deception over Ham, aka Nubia Kush, aka the believers in Jesus Christ, through the tribe of the conquering line of Judah, Jesus Christ himself becoming Benjamin's keeper. How it's all right there. And so the basket representing the ephah, as they're putting what they believe is the blackness in it to destroy it. In all reality, the fullest of the reflection is actually those that are planning the cancer sacrifice, that they themselves are the cancer itself, not who they're trying to put in it. So then you can see the ring, the shin ring is the basket, and that's what he says in the beginning. He says nothing but net. And then you got to go back to the Egyptian Book of Caverns, Egyptian Book of the Dead, and you'll find out that that's what Horus was digging in vengeance against 4 groups of people in retaliation for what happened to Osiris Orion. And then the Nubians were one of them. The Lebanese were one of them. The Asiatics were one of them. Basically, all of the world races. As you know, with the 5 Olympic rings, now that means 4 have pits dug for them. Only 1 ring is to escape. That represents the Lord of the Rings, who I said is masquerading himself as the identity of a double faction, when in all reality, as it comes down, he represents himself as a 0. And that's the fullness of the real fulfillment of how he's going to be eternally annihilated into nothing, as Jesus Christ says in connection with the lake of fire. And there's so much stuff to say here. So he's got the 32 in there. That's the CB. That's Charlie Brown. C3, 2B, 32. Guess what that means for everybody down here on this earth? That means all of you, up to your highest degree of 32. You're not illuminated. And here, as Charlie Brown is showing you, that they plan on screwing you too. Good grief. And then look here, Snoopy, the dog with the black and white colors. And then who's Snoopy always paying attention to? What's his good friend? It really ain't Charlie Brown. It's Twiggy, Woodstock. Remember Semi-Pro. Remember Twiggy Munson. Remember the twig. Remember the eagle with the twig clutched in his talons. It ain't this guy that's being made to think that he's the twig. See that, 32? See that? I'm trying to help you guys. And I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. And I'm not trying to scare the shit out of you. I think that you guys have done that well enough for yourself by getting involved with some BS satanic doctrines that have equated themselves to a murder plot that is run by an organization that is more of a giant than ever Goliath could have ever been, and that is going to be brought down with a singular small stone. And you know that Jesus Christ's truth is even symbolized as a stone as well. As I said, 11:11. They've got a mirror reflection, which is a beast image. We've got a mirror as well. And our mirror does not project and manifest the lie. It continually reflects the higher reflection of spiritual truth that we can attain to. And you can see that recorded in the Bible. We've already done some videos on it probably a couple years ago. You know, it's from glory to glory. And then there you would find it. I can't remember the verses, but it's in reflection, or it's in the talk about reflection. And that reflection is the image of Christ, not the image of the devil, not the image of a beast. You know, vengeance, anger, and wrath, and secrecy over others to destroy them. You know? Come on, man. So there's your 32. And this will fulfill that it's not just the Africans, as we know from the Egyptian Book of Caverns. It's the Asiatics, it's the Lebanese. Lebanese, I guess, would have to fulfill all the other darkened toned peoples over there in the Middle East, you know? Mediterranean, what have you. And then, of course, the Egyptians, and this was from an Egyptian point of view at this time, because it was in relationship to the only races that they were really in contact with. And that's how they were translating, at least in this Egyptian Book of the Dead, the pits that were being dug, because this represented the major players, at least in their mind, historically, ancient times, that had something to do with the fall of the ancient first time Zep Tepi, the time of the high sand, Osiris, Orion. So I think that's pretty amazing. You know, it couldn't get any more intense. There's something in the movie Hobbit that I found with this skull, darkened right eye tetrahedron seal. It'll blow you away, and I just have to come back later on and talk about that. But you know, please don't let these people trick you into thinking that the real spiritual, supernatural event that has taken place with me and around me, and how all this has come about, and why my building's the way that it is, and why everything they look at around me is the way that it is, and how I'm able to do what I do, as non-perfect as I am in it, and I do suffer much imperfection. I don't claim perfection. I don't claim wanting to be a God. I claim wanting to follow God as best I can. That's what I claim. And I'm not the best at it. But I am very good at offering myself up in place of the others that I love. And I love everyone. If it takes for this truth to get out so that you guys can learn, if it takes some stuff happening to me in place of all you, somehow I'm comforted in that fact that I can go through it somehow, and that's got to be through the Spirit, So I think that you guys can see I don't gain anything out of this. I work so incredibly hard just to put food on my table and to have this roof that I've got over my head. And I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm not making a lot of new friends. Who in the world would want a bunch of people stalking around you, watching your every move, trying to put cameras and bugs everywhere, and then threatening your life and your family members? Who would want that? I don't want that. But it's a product of what happens when you need to reveal the truth, as Jesus Christ has said. He says, what I revealed to you in secret, go shout it from the housetops. Here I am, right here, shouting the absolute secrets kept hidden from the foundation of the world to everyone, freely, regardless of who you are. And that's how it's supposed to be done, at least in this time. And if you know anything about the fourth carpenter is supposed to fray their system, begin to carve their roughness away by now working with the grain in the correct direction, not tearing it out with the terror. It's unfortunate that these people are terrorists
and they're pretending to be this Isis crap and all that stuff, which you know is the sacred feminine, which you know, if anything, about the 13th Warrior, that movie with Antonio Banderas hanging out with 12 Nordic Aryan dudes. What did they need? They needed this 13th dude that wasn't an Aryan. And then who did that end up being? It ended up being a Muslim. And then there's the Muslims, which they've been promoting since the 9/11 event, which is now connected to the further manifestation into evil, the greater repercussion of that, as this Isis stuff, as I revealed, the connection with the sacred feminine, which Isis really represents Jashin. So you know all that's still Freemasonry. Just trying to, once again, further pull the wool over everybody's eyes. You know what I mean? And instead, it's really the wool that's over their eyes, because they're the wolves in sheep's clothing. Isn't that the irony? Isn't that the irony? So take this very seriously. You know, Snoopy was the black and white, the BW, right? And then there's the twig, which is the Woodstock. You know, right there. That was the little yellow bird. Remember how I told you there was a change in meaning of symbolism based upon its relative connection to the source applied? So you got the twig being called the Woodstock. Well, that represents who? That's those that are stranded up there on that moon, right? Right? And Jesus Christ gives you this within the mystery of that of the parable of the wheat and the tares. He starts telling you about somebody casted away into the fire. And then remember the cast that was put on Cornelius in the movie Semi-Pro. And then remember the connection with Gilligan's Island, SS Minnow, and the Castaways. And then, of course, you've got the connection with the island being surrounded by those waters, which then would further relate to the moon. And then you've got Mary Ann, and then that represents the daughter Jerusalem, symbolized with the barn. And then you've got Ginger, which symbolizes, in their mind, the connection with who they're going to destroy in a relative fashion connected with Ishtar, the harlot, as they have divided that identity, not between just two, multiple fractures of personalities that they're equating through this. So I think the Charlie Brown Code is very strong, and let's not forget what you see here. There's the zigzag line. Okay? Remember what I told you, that symbolizes the movements of the moon. Okay? Could these dots that we're seeing here be really the moon? Huh? Could that really be the moon? And then now, would that, I don't have it on hand, or maybe I do. I do. Okay, now. All right. And then remember the zigzag line right there. There it is. Okay? And then yellow shirt. And then we know that even from Lucky Charms, the little green men are telling us it's yellow moons. Okay? So now, if you look at this rising and falling dot here, it forms a triangle. This dot could be seen as an eye that's in it. Okay? All right, well, we know this part of the seal is all about the moon. Huh? Could it be that this part of the seal is as well a part of the moon? Now, let's get back into the understanding how I was describing Enki, this knowledge giver that is then connected to the Illuminati, which is their symbol, which I told you they're really obstructing the light. They're blocking the light. So really, as you see, this triangle isn't emanating any light. There's light that's behind it that it's obstructing. And I really think that the oldest portion of the symbol is what they were trying to convey, but it lost the meaning. And then the guys that picked it up and thought this was some secretive knowledge to wield to make them gods have now coveted this as the meaning of God itself and how to become God. But in all reality, it's a fallen God who actually was seeking to block the light of the true sun right there in front of your face. Now, this could be now in reference to the moon, which now the reflection of the light of the sun off of the moon obscures the original spiritual truth, because these people are in the darkness and void of night, and in essence this vacuum of spiritual truth that they have created. And of course they're polarized now towards that darkness and towards that vacuum. So could this be a connection
with the reference of their deity, aka the Illuminati, on the moon in a material form as the Sons of Sam? And I would say yes. I would say yes. But I think that you can see that it's really all coming together. Now, what does this platform represent? It represents, men, and then here is our little comet, little tail wearing celestial spheres up here. Okay, so I think that we had an audio outage, and what I was going to say was this platform represents the Baalbek temple in the Cedars of Lebanon. There's your cedar trees. There's your Aerosmith rocket men, and then there's your little celestial comets in connection with planets, in connection with symbolisms and synchronicities for the moon. And now, oh man, there's just so much to say. And so you could see the connection with the woodstock and the twiggy. All right, there's the twiggy, there's the woodstock. And then really now the black and the white that are unifying that in connection now with these dogs of Osiris and Orion being shown as Snoopy. But then, like I said, all the rest of you guys that are in this organization and all these organizations and all these other lesser organizations and greater, and there's just so many of these secret societies. But of course, we know that the most supposed controlling of them are these Freemasons that are encrusted into the politics, encrusted into the entertainment industry, encrusted into the academic industry. This is all you guys right here. This is all you guys. You ain't 33. You haven't reached the illumination. You're not going to and fro up and down all over the earth. And then maybe some of you that think that you have reached the 33rd degree are not in connection with the ultimate agenda for those that are there already, that are using this all over again as a temptation, the apple of the eye, to supposedly bring fault to someone else or goodness to themselves at the cost of fault for someone else. And it's all right there. It's all right there. So I'm going to stop the video here, and don't let all the symbolism escape you. You know, the GG, the double, the good grief, you know, twig, woodstock. You know, what did I tell you? It was the stock exchange. And what stock are they trying to exchange? They're trying to exchange the stock of those that are on the moon and then get rid of the stock that's here. And then, of course, in so many ways, they're given different portions of the organization who the identity is, who is supposed to be removed. But in all reality, this number 32, CB, and even Charlie's a white dude, still getting connected to this yellow Nanna slipping up. You see that? You see that. And then you see this here. And then you know about Zechariah chapter 4 and 5. And remember all the videos we did on the EFAB basket, and then what basket Baal is, B-A-A-L. Baal is another derivative for Ashtar, aka even Venus, which is that dude that looks like a lady coming back to the fullness of Lucifer, the original light bearer, that the light that he bared in all reality was his fallen light of himself in his own rebellion against the kingdom of the Father, which had already had a perfection program in place for our world and all the other worlds connected to it. But of course he rejected the perfection program for the mortals of time and space in favor of the perfection program for himself, and then tricked everyone that he had a perfection program for you guys. In all reality, it was the perfection program for his guys. Right. And of course, Satan and the devil had promises made to them that he couldn't keep, because of course he became sealed as Satan, as the actual real spirit fallen Satan, who is not a man on the moon. And as I said, we've already tried to explain that to these people before, but they just lose the connection, because remember, Sam Yeza never has the sexual contact with the daughters of men. It was the 18 perfects as quoted in the book of Enoch. Sam Yeza leads them into that, and as I said, this reveals the spirit identity of who he was as not being in the physical form. But as I said, the Sam Yeza
further connects back to different factions within the Sons of God themselves, and you have to really read the Urantia to understand the real ins and outs with all that. So there's your 32, there's your CB, there's your EFAB basket, nothing but net, Egyptian Book of the Dead, Horus now digging the pits, 4 pits, and it's supposed to become the Lord of the Rings, and now you see the plot and how it's supposed to unfold.